We added a lot of functionality in this course section. Our recipe book is really taking shape. Now, of course, there are also some features we haven't added yet, which we will add later. For now, I want to make this shopping list input fields here working so that we can add new items to our shopping list. We will override this later when we learned about forums, but it's a great exercise to work with local references and add viewchild for now. So what I want to do is I want to work on this shopping list added component here. Here we got a couple of input fields and we got the add button, which submits our form later, delete and clear. Now I want to allow the user to add new items. So what I'll do is I will restructure both inputs to use multiple lines simply to make it easy to read and understand. And on the first input for the name, I will add a local reference named name input. On the second one, I'll add one named amount input. Now, with that set up, your challenge would be to get this add button to kind of use these local references, preferably by either passing them as an argument or, more advanced, by selecting them with add viewchild, so that once you click the button, you use the values of these inputs to create a new ingredient and add it to your array of ingredients. Here's your chance to pause the video and try this on your own, then we'll do this together. So, were you successful? Let's do it together. We already have our local references here, so all I have to do for now is add a click listener, and I'll name it onAddItem, and I could pass the local references or even already local reference.value here as arguments. I will use the add viewchild approach though. So in the shopping list added component, I'll add the onAddItem method, and then at the top I'll add two properties, the name input reference, and that will be of type element ref as we learned. Make sure to import this from @AngularCore, and it will get a value by using add viewchild, which also needs to be imported from @AngularCore. And here we pass the name of the local reference. So name input for this first input field. Well, and now I'm going to duplicate this and simply rename this to amount input and amount input ref. That's the local reference we put on the second input here. And with these two inputs added in onAddItem, I now want to emit a new event where I pass this data to the parent component, which is the shopping list component, which manages my array of ingredients. So we learned how to emit our own events, so I'll quickly go through that again. Here, I'll name it ingredient added, which will be a new event emitter. Of course, you could choose another name for your event. I will pass an object here as an argument, which will hold the name, which will be a string, and the amount, which will be a number. And that here, also close the parentheses, that here is simply just a type definition. So the type will be a JavaScript object with two properties, name and amount, where the first property, name, is a string and the second one is a number. So that's not a value, that's just a type definition. Now, of course, for this exact type definition, we got our ingredient model. So we can replace this with just ingredient. Make sure to import ingredient from the shared folder and then the ingredient.model file though. Well, and with this in onAddItem, we can create a new ingredient here with the new keyword and then ingredient. And we simply pass the name input ref native element value here. And that will simply be the value of the input element. And the same for the amount. But since this is really long, I'll create two new temporary constants, so to say, or constants to make this code a bit shorter. So the ingredient name will be retrieved from the name input reference, from the native element, which is the input element, and then from the value field. And the same for the ingredient amount. Here, I will simply get this from the amount input ref. And with these two constants here, I will simply pass ing name and ing amount here. So I will create my new ingredient with that data. Important, The constants here are used, or I use constant instead of let, because we're not going to change these variables, but they won't be variables anymore then, as well we only assign these values one time. And you should declare something as a constant if you don't plan on changing it. So with this, I can now emit my own event here and pass the new ingredient as data. Well, and with this, all we have to do is we have to add output in front of our own event here so that we can listen to it from outside. Make sure to import output from Angular Core. And now in our shopping list component, which implements the shopping added component, we can listen to our ingredient added event here. And there I want to execute on ingredient added. And we will get some data, which is always stored in $sign event, which I want to pass to my on ingredient added method. Let's implement this method here. So on ingredient added, I know I will receive an ingredient here of type ingredient. That is what our event emits, the data we set up there. And now we can reach out to our ingredients array and push a new ingredient, the one we got here as data, on it. And with that, we should be able to indeed add some, add some bread to it. Click add, and you see it on the list. So we got a halfway working shopping list. Of course, delete and clear is not working. We also can't select items here. That is something I'll work on later once we learned more about forms, which give us some nice tools to manage them. But we greatly enhanced our app in this section. We added some kind of working navigation. We are able to select a recipe here, and we are able to add new items to the shopping list already. Even though some of these behaviors will get overwritten later in the course, it still is a great start. Now let's move on and learn more about directives so that next time we come back to this project, we can make our drop-down buttons here work. See you there.